Ethan Vale had learned long ago that people could make up their minds about someone in less than a second. The moment he stepped into a room, they noticed the worn work uniform, the stains that never seemed to disappear, and the maintenance badge hanging from his neck. Then came the looks. Sometimes they were subtle, sometimes they were not. "Here comes the king of garbage," one man laughed as Ethan entered a crowded transit station. Ethan raised a hand. "Please, it's Emperor of Garbage, respect the title." A few people laughed, most didn't. That was normal. In New Earth Prime, status meant everything. Wealthy citizens lived high above the city in floating districts filled with luxury gardens, private starcrafts, and artificial beaches. People like Ethan lived below, fixing the machines that kept those perfect lives running. He spent his days repairing recycling drones and filtration systems. Nobody thanked him when things worked. Everyone complained when they didn't. Still, Ethan smiled. Not because life was good, because if he stopped laughing, he wasn't sure what would remain. That evening, he sat alone at a small food stand after finishing a 14-hour shift. Around him, couples shared meals. Friends told stories, families argued over trivial things. He watched them quietly. Love, it was everywhere, and somehow always out of reach. His communicator buzzed, a work order, emergency assignment. Sector 47, Ethan sighed. Romantic evening canceled once again, he told the empty chair across from him. The chair remained unimpressed. An hour later, he arrived at the edge of the wastelands beyond the city. Several surveillance drones hovered overhead. What happened? He asked a technician. The technician shrugged. Something fell from orbit. A ship. Maybe. A meteor. Maybe. A giant alien chicken. The technician stared. Ethan nodded. So we're keeping our options open. The man walked away. Ethan smiled to himself and continued toward the impact zone. As he approached, he realized this wasn't any human vessel. The structure embedded in the ground possessed smooth organic curves unlike anything manufactured on Earth. Strange lights pulsed beneath its surface. His scanner immediately failed, then restarted, then displayed a message, "Unknown technology." "Very helpful," Ethan muttered. The damaged entrance slowly opened. A wave of warm air escaped. Inside, he found someone, a woman. At first glance, she looked human. Then he noticed the ears, long and elegant, extending beyond her silver hair. Alien, without warning, her eyes opened. She looked frightened, confused, lost. Ethan carefully raised both hands. "Hi." The woman stared. He pointed at himself. "Ethan." Then he pointed toward her. The woman hesitated. "Lyra." Her voice was soft. For several seconds, neither spoke. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "Good news." Lyra blinked. "You survived a crash." She continued staring. "The bad news is that Earth customer service is terrible." To his surprise, she smiled. A small smile, but real. Something unexpected happened inside Ethan's chest. Most people looked at him with disgust. Others ignored him completely. Yet this stranger looked at him as though she actually saw him, not his uniform, not his social rank. Him. Lyra slowly reached for his hand. Ethan froze. The gesture was simple, almost ordinary. Yet nobody had touched him with such warmth in years. Her fingers wrapped around his. A strange device on her wrist translated her words. "I thought I was alone." Ethan looked at her. For the first time in a very long time, he understood exactly how she felt. And without realizing it, the lonely man everyone called filthy took the first step toward the person who would completely change his life. Ethan should have reported Lyra immediately. That was the law. Any contact with unknown extraterrestrial life had to be turned over to the authorities within minutes. The city constantly reminded citizens of that rule through public broadcasts and security alerts. Yet hours passed, then an entire day, and Ethan still hadn't reported her. Instead, he helped her hide inside an abandoned maintenance facility beneath the city. He didn't fully understand why. Perhaps it was because she looked terrified whenever military patrols appeared on nearby scanners. Or perhaps it was because she was the first person in years who spoke to him as if he mattered. "You keep staring at me," Lyra said one evening. Ethan nearly dropped the repair tool in his hand. "I do not." "You do." "I am scientifically observing an alien life form." Lyra smiled. "You stared at me for 12 seconds. 12? Almost 13. Ethan laughed. "That's impressive. My people have excellent perception." My people have excellent excuses. The sound of her laughter filled the room. For reasons he couldn't explain, hearing it made his difficult day disappear. Over the following weeks, repairing Lyra's vessel became their shared mission. She taught him about her civilization. Entire worlds connected through living stargates, cities capable of growing themselves, artificial intelligences that composed music based on emotions. Ethan listened with fascination. At the same time, Lyra became fascinated by him, not by Earth, not by human technology, by Ethan. One night she found him repairing an old service drone. "Why do you fix things nobody cares about?" she asked. Ethan shrugged. "Someone has to. You always help others." "Not always. You saved me." The words settled heavily between them. For a moment neither spoke. Then Ethan looked away. "Most people wouldn't call it saving." "I would." Something in her voice made his heart beat faster. He quickly changed the subject. That became increasingly difficult as days turned into weeks. The friendship between them deepened. Then something more dangerous began growing beneath it. Neither wanted to admit it. Both felt it. One evening, they sat together watching transport ships cross the night sky through an old observation window. Lyra broke the silence. "Back home, there is a word." "What word?" "It means finding the person your soul recognizes before your mind does." Ethan chuckled nervously. "That's a very complicated word. Our language enjoys complications." His smile faded. "What happens when someone finds that person? They never truly feel alone again." For several seconds, he couldn't answer. Nobody had ever spoken to him that way. Nobody had ever looked at him the way Lyra did. Then alarms suddenly erupted throughout the facility. Red warning lights flashed. Both jumped to their feet. Ethan rushed toward a terminal. His expression immediately darkened. "What is it?" Lyra asked. "We've been found." Security forces, corporate hunters, military drones, every scanner showed the same thing. Someone had discovered traces of alien technology, and they were closing in fast. Lyra's face paled. "If they capture me." "They won't." "Ethan." "They won't." For the first time, she saw genuine determination in his eyes. Not the humor he used to hide pain. Not the self-deprecation he used to survive rejection. Something stronger. Someone was threatening the person he cared about, and he wasn't willing to lose her. A violent impact shook the facility. The outer entrance exploded. Metal screamed. More alarms activated. They had minutes, maybe less. Ethan grabbed her hand. "Come on." Together they ran through forgotten tunnels beneath the city. Behind them, armed teams advanced. Ahead of them lay uncertainty. At one point, Lyra stumbled. Ethan immediately caught her. Their faces ended up inches apart. Everything around them seemed to disappear. The alarms, the danger, the pursuit, only the two of them remained. For a brief moment, neither moved. Then Lyra whispered softly, "If we survive this." Ethan swallowed. "If we survive this, what?" She looked directly into his eyes. "If we survive this, there is something I need to tell you." Another explosion echoed through the tunnel. Reality returned. They resumed running. Neither noticed the strange device on Lyra's wrist quietly activating. Far beyond Earth, far beyond the solar system, a signal had awakened. A signal that had been silent for years. And somewhere among the stars, someone had just learned exactly where Lyra was. The signal reached its destination faster than light. By the time Ethan and Lyra escaped the underground tunnels, an entire fleet had already begun moving across interstellar gateways. Neither of them knew it yet. They only knew they were running out of places to hide. For 2 days, they stayed ahead of the pursuit. Corporate forces continued tracking Lyra's technology, while government agencies searched every district of New Earth Prime. During that time, the conversation Lyra had started in the tunnel remained unfinished. "If we survive this," those words never left Ethan's mind. Neither did the look in her eyes. On the 3rd day, they finally reached Lyra's damaged vessel. The repairs were incomplete. The engines functioned. Barely. The navigation systems remained unstable. "It won't survive a long journey," Ethan said. "It doesn't need to." Lyra looked toward the stars. Before Ethan could ask what she meant, dozens of ships suddenly appeared above the planet. Not human ships, not corporate vessels, something else. Every communication network on Earth erupted into chaos. "Unknown fleet detected. Unknown fleet detected. Unknown fleet detected." Lyra stared at the display. "They came." "Who?" "My people." The fleet transmitted a single message. A request, not a threat, not a declaration of war, a request for Lyra's safe return. The governments of Earth refused. The corporations refused even faster. They wanted access to alien technology. They wanted power. Within hours, a confrontation began forming in orbit. Millions watched. Ethan watched too. And for the first time in his life, he stopped feeling small. For years, he had allowed others to define him. Filthy, worthless, insignificant. Now he understood something. Those words had never been true. One person had seen his value long before he saw it himself. Lyra, he turned toward her. You have to go. Pain crossed her face. No, your people came for you. I don't want to leave you. The confession hung between them. Neither could hide their feelings any longer. Ethan smiled sadly. You belong with them. Lyra stepped closer. My people taught me many things. Her voice trembled. But you taught me the most important one. Ethan remained silent. You taught me what love feels like. For a moment, the entire universe seemed to stop. No alarms, no pursuit, no warships, only the truth. The truth both had been carrying for weeks. Ethan reached for her hand. I love you too. Tears filled Lyra's eyes, then another transmission arrived. This one addressed directly to her. The leader of her civilization appeared, an older woman with the same long ears. She listened quietly as Lyra explained everything. The crash, the pursuit, the man who had saved her life. When the conversation ended, silence followed. Then the leader smiled. Bring him home. Ethan blinked. What? Lyra laughed through her tears. In my world, home is not a place. The words felt familiar. He remembered the strange phrase she had once described. The person your soul recognizes before your mind does. The realization finally reached him. She had been talking about him all along. The conflict ended peacefully shortly afterward. Faced with an advanced interstellar civilization, Earth's corporations abandoned their demands. Governments negotiated new relations. For the first time, humanity gained access to a wider galactic community. Months later, Ethan stood beneath unfamiliar stars. The former maintenance worker who repaired forgotten machines had become something else. Not a hero, not a celebrity. Simply a man who no longer hated himself, a man who understood his own worth, a man who had found where he belonged. Lyra walked beside him and slipped her hand into his. Do you miss Earth? She asked. Sometimes. And the people who called you filthy. Ethan laughed. Not particularly. Lyra laughed with him. Together they continued forward, not toward privilege, not toward status, not toward power, toward a future they would build together. The galaxy knew Ethan Vale as the human who helped unite two civilizations. But none of that mattered to him. Because after a lifetime of rejection, loneliness, and separation, he had finally found the thing he wanted most. Someone who looked at him and saw home. And this time, neither of them would ever be alone again. 32 years passed. The galaxy changed. Earth changed. Entire civilizations joined the network of living gateways that Lyra's people had protected for centuries. Trade routes connected worlds that had once believed they were alone. Old enemies became allies. New discoveries reshaped science every year. And through all those years, Ethan Vale remained a name people remembered. Not because he was powerful. Not because he was wealthy. People remembered him because he had been ordinary. The man once mocked for cleaning machines had helped open the door to an age of cooperation. Ethan never became comfortable with the attention. Whenever young journalists asked how it felt to be a historic figure, he usually answered the same way. I still fix things. And he did, even after moving to Lyra's world, even after becoming an ambassador, even after being offered positions of enormous influence. He still spent his free time repairing broken equipment and helping maintenance crews. Lyra loved that about him. One evening, she found him repairing a transport unit. You realize there are engineers for this. Ethan nodded. I know. Then why are you doing it yourself? It looked sad. The machine looked sad. Very sad. Lyra laughed. After all those years, hearing her laugh still affected him exactly the same way. The decades had brought them joy, friendship, family, shared adventures across hundreds of worlds. They never had children of their own, but they became guardians, mentors, and trusted friends to countless young travelers. Their home became famous throughout the Gateway Network. Not because it was important, because everyone was welcome there. Humans, aliens, scientists, pilots, refugees, dreamers. People arrived as strangers and left as family. That was what Ethan and Lyra had built together. A home, the thing both of them had been searching for when they first met. Yet time eventually demanded its price. Humans aged faster than Lyra's species. The difference became impossible to ignore. Ethan's hair turned silver. His movements slowed. Meanwhile, Lyra remained almost unchanged. One morning, Ethan sat quietly beside a gateway overlooking distant stars. Lyra joined him. Neither spoke for several minutes. Finally, Ethan smiled. "You know, this isn't fair." "What is?" "You still look exactly the same." Lyra squeezed his hand. "Ethan, I knew this day would come." Her eyes filled with sadness. So did I. The conversation they had avoided for years had finally arrived. Time, mortality, separation. The one challenge neither love nor technology had fully conquered. Scientists offered solutions: life extension treatments, experimental procedures, consciousness transfer technologies. Ethan refused them all. He listened politely, then shook his head. "I've had enough miracles." The galaxy struggled to understand. Many believed he should live forever. Ethan disagreed. What gives life meaning isn't how long it lasts. It became one of his most quoted statements. As the years continued, he spent less time traveling and more time at home. Visitors still came. Young people still asked for advice. His answer rarely changed. Find people who see your worth before you see it yourself. One evening, a young human asked him a question. "Do you regret anything?" Ethan looked across the room at Lyra. She was speaking with guests, laughing, happy, the same smile that had captured his heart decades earlier. Not one thing. Years later, Ethan finally understood his journey was ending. The realization brought peace rather than fear. On his final night, the house was quiet. The stars beyond the gateway glowed softly. Lyra sat beside him, holding his hand. Just as she had done on the day they met, for a long time neither spoke. Words seemed unnecessary. Eventually, Ethan broke the silence. "Remember the crash?" Lyra smiled through tears. "You made a joke." "I make a lot of jokes." "It wasn't a very good one." Ethan laughed weakly. "I disagree." "You would." For a moment, they were young again. Two lonely souls finding each other by chance, or destiny, or whatever force guided hearts across the universe. "I was afraid," Lyra whispered. "When?" "The day we met." "So was I." "You saved me." Ethan slowly shook his head. "No." Lyra looked at him. "You saved me too." The tears finally escaped her eyes. Neither tried to stop them, because both understood something important. Love had never been about avoiding loss. Love was choosing someone despite knowing loss would eventually come, and they would choose each other again, every single time. Hours later, Ethan's breathing grew slower. The room became quiet. Lyra remained beside him, holding his hand. Then, peacefully, Ethan Vale slipped away. The man the world once called filthy was gone, but that was not the end. Years passed, then decades. The galaxy continued moving forward. New generations were born, new worlds were discovered, new stories emerged, yet Ethan's influence remained. Schools taught his story, travelers repeated his words. Entire communities were inspired by the home he and Lyra had created. Eventually, a statue was proposed. Lyra rejected the idea. He wouldn't want that. Instead, she funded something else. A network of shelters across hundreds of worlds, places where anyone could belong. The project carried a simple name: home. Centuries later, travelers still found those shelters, and inside everyone stood the same inscription. Not a speech, not a historical record, just a single sentence: "You are welcome here." The words reflected everything Ethan had become, everything he had learned, everything he had given. Long after his death, Lyra continued visiting the first world where they had met. Earth. One evening, she stood near the old crash site. Most people had forgotten where it was. She never did. A young girl approached her. "Are you Lyra?" "Yes." "The Lyra." Lyra laughed softly. "I suppose so." The child hesitated. "Did you really love Ethan Vale?" Lyra looked toward the stars. The answer arrived instantly. As easily as breathing, every day. The girl smiled, then ran off. Lyra remained there for a while longer, watching the sky, thinking about a maintenance worker who had once believed nobody would ever see his value, thinking about the life they had shared, the family they had created, the worlds they had changed. Eventually, she smiled, not because she had forgotten him, because she never would. And somewhere in every act of kindness, every open door, every stranger welcomed as family, Ethan's story continued. His journey had ended. His impact never would, and that was enough.